Welcome to the Newport Mastermind Collective, where we bring together thought leaders, financial experts, innovators to discuss strategies for building and preserving wealth. I'm your host, Richard Riva. Today's episode explores one of the most common questions we are hearing from clients right now. Should you buy a home in this market? Or is patience the wiser course? With me today is Dat Nguyen, our mortgage specialist. Dat, wonderful to have you back with us.
It's good to be here, Richard. And this topic is every day for me. Clients, colleagues, friends, family, and realtors, everyone is asking the same question. So let's give them some real answers.
Yeah, that's precisely what we intend to do. Just an honest look at the numbers and what the strategy is behind them.
So let me ask you this, Richard. When someone asks, should I buy now? What are they really afraid of?
Well, in my experience, they're afraid of being wrong. Of course, of making a major financial commitment and watching the market move away or against them. That fear is entirely understandable, but it's also, in most cases, the thing that costs them the most over time.
Exactly. And for me, like on the mortgage side, I'll tell you what I see. And people are anchored to a number. They remember 3% rates. They see 6% today and think it's way too high. But the rate isn't the deal. The deal is the property, the equity, and I would say the plan.
Yeah, there is a well-documented concept in behavioral finance called loss aversion.
Right.
Human beings feeling the pain of loss roughly
Yeah.
twice as intensely as pleasure,
Right.
rather, and the equivalent of any kind of gain. So what that means in practice is that people waiting on the sidelines are not necessarily being rational. They're being human, which is fine, right?
Right.
And the cost of that hesitation compounds over years of appreciation that they are not capturing. And it can be pretty significant.
Yeah. Let me give a real example. A client of mine waited 18 months to buy in Orange County. In that time, the median home went up to $80,000. So the rate they were waiting for never came. They bought anyway at a higher purchase price and a higher rate. Waiting cost them more than buying would have.
Yeah, and that is the pattern I've observed repeatedly over the course of my career. People optimize for their monthly payment when the most important question is, what asset does your long-term financial position require?
Right. So let's do a quick hypothetical. $800,000 home in Orange County, let's just say 6.25% rate, 20% down. So you're financing $640,000. Your payment on principal and interest is roughly $3,940 a month. And I understand why that number gives people pause. It is a meaningful monthly obligation, if your rent is $3,000 a month, but here's what you're doing while you pay that. You're building what we call equity every single month. And in Southern California, appreciation historically runs 4% to 6% annually. So on a $800,000 home, that's $32,000 to $48,000 in net worth just from appreciation every year.
Yeah, that's a clear point, right? And the appreciation is not something you find sitting in a savings account. So even at today's interest rates, wealth building mechanisms of real estate is fundamentally different from any other asset class most families have access to. So that's what we call building wealth or accumulation of wealth in that strategy.
Right. And if rates dip further, Fannie Mae is forecasting under 6% by end of this year. So you refinance, you lock in the lower payment, and you've already captured the appreciation.
Yes, right. I've heard what you said that before, right? Marry the house, date the rate. While it sounds simple or cliche, there's a genuine financial logic behind that, right? So the property is a long-term asset and interest rates are a variable you can address when the market allows for it.
Yeah, I mean, it is cliche, but look, it's data-backed. The people who won in 2012 bought at the bottom of the post-crash market when everyone was scared. The people who won in 2019 bought before COVID sent prices to the moon. The pattern repeats. Fear is a signal to pay attention. Fear is everywhere, Richard. Fear is a reason why we say we should have done it yesterday, right? I'm not saying don't do it without research or, property guidance, but don't let it stop you if everything checks out.
So I would add one more observation from the wealth management side, rather. For most American families, I advise, have home equity accounting for 60 to 70% of their total net worth. That equity cannot be built until the asset is owned.
Right.
So every month, a household that pays rent, right? In effect, they're funding someone else's balance sheet.
And rents haven't gone down either, by the way, only up, but never down.
Yeah, that's true, right? I mean, I want to be clear. We're not suggesting that this is a right move for everyone. There are circumstances where restraints are genuinely a prudent course. So, Dat, walk us through what you would see or should in the case of a wait.
Sure. I mean, there are real situations where waiting makes sense. If you don't have stable income, if you cannot handle the monthly payment based on your budget and current lifestyle where you can't save a little each month, buying a home may not be for you at this moment.
So, what about the question of reserves, like liquidity after the purchase?
If you're stretching to put 3% down and you have no reserves after closing, that's so dangerous. Life happens and you need a buffer. I'd rather someone wait 6 months and buy with a cushion than close with $0 in their account. Believe it or not, Richard, that tends to happen.
Yeah. You know, on another subject, though, comparing or someone that's listening to this thinking, you know, I'm paying $3,000 a month in rent or whatever, and then, you know, I've got I got to come up with an extra $900 plus the down payment. How do you address the issue in the sense of liquidity and reserves and marrying or evaluating rent versus a purchase, right? Because it's a bigger picture, and I'm wondering what you tell people.
Yeah. I mean, the rent you're buying into here, well, let me backtrack this one. So when it comes to rent, right, you're paying the landlord, and the place that you're staying at or you're renting, it's not an asset. And so there's two things. One is it's not growing your net worth. And then two, the rent is not tax deductible either. So in the grand scheme of things, most of the time, if someone is going from $3,000 to $3,900 a month, there's a couple things that I always want to analyze is, hey, is that going to overstretch your budget, right? And two, do you understand like, hey, a lot of this, the interest that you pay is tax deductible. So when you do file your taxes, you tend to get a bigger refund, right? A couple $1,000s extra. Net payment is actually gets closer down to, let's just say $3,500. Okay.
Right.
Now,
it's actually a good point. I just want to emphasize that's when you buy a home and you go through this exercise, it's at the end of the year that you see those savings, or the end of the next year that you see those savings, not every single month.
And then to top it all off, now you understand there is a chance to refinance to a lower rate sometime in the near future. Your payment will go down eventually as well. And then you understand that you have an asset that now appreciates 4 to 6% each year. So if you understand the tax deductions, you understand where the market potentially could go to help lower your payment, you understand that the home is a long-term asset that's going to grow your net worth over time. If that's something that you find value that, hey, it is worth to sacrifice and have a higher payment, and maybe we'll cut back on our lifestyle a little bit, maybe take one less vacation, or maybe, you know, spend a little less on eating out. You know, there's always ways to make it work if it's within your budget, right? So those are things that I sit down with the client and kind of I show them side by side on how everything looks. And then, you know, everyone's a little different, right? If you know, if they can't handle that payment bump, then they just have to either A, wait, or B, you know, go look for a lower price home, or maybe look at different areas that fits that budget. And then, you know, if it's somewhere else, build equity over there, and then build yourself up, and then move back here, right? So there's many ways to play it. It's just depending on the person.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think a spending policy is really good. Running financial numbers is really strong, and I think that's a lot of value. So, you know, if your horizon is less than 3 years, maybe real estate's not the right spot for you, right? Transaction costs, both in the ends of the purchase and combined with the time frame, it just may not make sense. So, making a shorter timeline is difficult to justify. you gotta be in the right place at the right time to make this work. I know you work with people to make them well informed making those decisions.
Right. So to summarize the should you wait list, unstable income, no reserves, short timeline, or a life event on the horizon, job relocation, family change, anything that would force a sale. Outside of those, Richard, the math usually says buy if the monthly is within your budget and the house checks out.
I want to speak to something that I believe is at the heart of the conversation we're having, right? In my experience,
Yeah.
families who build lasting wealth approach a home purchase very differently from those who struggle.
Yeah.
So most people approach it in a way that they would approach buying a car, for example, right?
Mhm.
Focused on how it feels, whether they like the kitchen or whether the payment is comfortable.
Right.
Families who accumulate real estate wealth, right? Or rather real wealth with real estate, ask an entirely different set of questions.
Interesting. So what does that look like in practice, Richard?
Yeah, they typically ask what the asset will do for them or for their balance sheet over the next 10 years. Right? Even an equity player is going to be saying 5 or 10 years. So I think about financing structures, equity positions, market fundamentals. It's not about perfection. It's about whether the decision serves their long-term financial interests and if the investor's orientation and its discipline can genuinely be learned.
Got it. So I guess on the real estate side, then that's where the strategy comes in. First time home buyers, especially, leave so much on the table because they don't know about down payment assistance, grant programs, seller concession credits, rate buy downs. You can actually engineer a deal where the seller buys your rate down by 2% for the first year and 1% down for the second. So all of a sudden, the payment looks very different.
Yeah, that's sort of insider trading, if you will, and understanding how that business works. But,
Right.
just like buying a car, if you don't know how the
Yeah.
car business works, or in this case, the house buying business works, you really should be talking to, somebody that is like that, that's going to help. And
Right.
that's, most buyers are just simply unaware of, right? And that's maybe just lack of experience or whatnot, and they're just not taking the advice, but which is precisely why having the right professionals around you matters so much, right? So get that advice before you make those decisions.
I mean, you and I talk about this all the time, right? Like we
Mhm.
are advisors, and that's why education matters. And it's why we built the show and why our group exists.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think, the point of it is, right, work with a team that you're comfortable with. And I think as we close in this conversation, I want to offer a thought for anyone who's been sitting on this decision. I've been 3 decades of advising clients. I've never once had anyone come back to me and say they regretted buying a well priced property in a sound market and holding on to it. What I've heard so far, or far too often, right, is regret about waiting. The perfect market, the perfect rate, the perfect moment, those don't arrive. What does arrive is those opportunities and the question of whether you are positioned to take advantage of them.
And if you don't have a certified mortgage advisor, not just a loan officer, an advisor, that's the first call you make. Someone who can look at your income, your goals, and your market and show you the actual math, not just a rate quote or a payment quote.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think people need to understand that there's a
Yeah.
difference in those people and obviously getting the right advice. So our contact information will be in the notes, right? We'll have a lot of resources and things for you to look over.
Yeah.
So our contact information will be in the notes below, tons of resources to access. And if today's conversation was useful, I would encourage you to share it with someone in your life who's wrestling with the same question. It is often the most valuable thing we can do, get the right information out to the right people who need it.
Yeah. And we really do want to help you because the best thing you can do for your network is get them the right information. So thanks for tuning in to the Newport Mastermind Collective. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.